I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. It's a little chilly out here, but trust me, it's colder in NYCHA.
Right.
And we're joined here today by many of the members of the tech community, NYCHA residents, but most importantly, a person I believe was part of the main architect and thoughtfulness behind the CompStat era and technology, retired Chief Anemone, Lou Anemone. And 25 years later, we have never had another increase in crime. We were in a city where we were experiencing close to 2,000 homicides a year, almost 98,000 robberies and grand larcenies. It was a city out of control where we were unable to put our hands around the problem. But with the introduction of a willingness from the men and women on patrol and a marriage with the technology identified as CompStat, we went from monitoring crime weekly and monthly to monitoring crime in real time. It is time for NYCHA to embrace real time and no longer living in the dark ages in the 21st century. You cannot continue to use 8-track technology in the iPhone age. They must get with it and understand that. When you do it, when you introduce technology, you're able to inspect what you expect and is no longer suspect. Living with the secrecy of this agency, you're unable to track repairs. You're unable to track the costs involved. You're unable to track the number of hours the men and women who are repairing services are actually providing to doing the services. Tenants are unable to track when they put in calls for services. We're walking into apartments with a pad and a piece of paper to write down complaints, when all over the globe people are using a device like this that can centralize information that everyone could have readily accessible. That is what we're calling for today. And so I want to thank Chief Louis Anemone, who you'll hear from in a moment. We want to thank the members from Esri, one of the companies that you'll hear from, Devin Hurd and Dave Lachelle. We want to thank Joel Natifada from OpenGov, another tech company, Isabella Lee from Whitman Houses, the Tenant Association, Darrell Burgess, Ingersoll Houses Tenant Association, and our various men and women who are part of NYCHA. And I want to thank the media for not allowing this issue to go away. Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers living in the Silicon Valley of the East should not be starving for technology to improve their condition. And because of your attention to this, it is compelling NYCHA for the first time to acknowledge that there is a serious problem, not only in leadership, but all the way down to the basic level of employees who are here and responsible for carrying out the function. NYCHA is in crisis. It doesn't stop here just in Fort Greene or Ingersoll Whitman. All over the entire city, you see this crisis being lived out every day. Just look around you. Some of this scaffolding have been in place for over 18 years. Some of the scaffolding has been up as long as children who have lived here. They believe that the scaffolding is part of the living condition because they were born into it and they're still into it. And I remember being at a press conference a few years ago when we were talking about the dismantling of scaffolding. Well, NYCHA did not get the memo because the scaffolding is still up and it needs to be removed. At Ingersoll Houses, just a few blocks away from here, residents are facing incomplete construction that has been going on for 15 months with no incinerators. The residents also have no heat or hot water for 3 days. No notices posted, and then when they post a notice stating that it's coming back on, just to find out it's not coming back on, just continuously playing the game of making announcements that fails to turn into reality. At Lafayette Houses in Bedford-Stuyvesant, there's a major rat infestation, not only in the Bronx, but also here in the borough of Brooklyn, due to the digging that's taking place in the area. Residents across the agency developments are facing maintenance backlogs, rodent infestation, water shortages, molding, heating problems, broken boilers. It just go on and on and on. New York City has become the poster child of slumlords, and we cannot have a slumlord list in this city without having New York City NYCHA on the top of that list. This is a public housing in New York City. The richest city in America is treating its tenants and its residents in this fashion. These problems are a major threat to the health and safety of all the NYCHA residents that are living here. And we cannot allow another winter with broken boilers. I don't know if they realize there was no surprise that winter was coming. To not resolve this issue in the summertime and now start having a conversation about boilers and the repairs of boilers. If you had a CompStat system, it could tell you the date of the boilers, when they installed, the maintenance, who's doing the maintenance, how much was spent on it. This is a centralized way of documenting and ensuring you're getting the right services for what you're supposed to get. When residents reports these problems, they're faced with an archaic 20th century system of tracking and reporting that does not do the job correctly. NYCHA staff will come into the apartments, as I stated, with a pad in their hand. This is unimaginable. When you write a summons, that summons is put in a centralized and computerized system. So if we can find people using technology, we can find the way to improve the system by using technology. It is where you put your money and your effort and your technology is stating where your interests are. And right now, the interest is not in the residents that are in NYCHA. There's no integrated digitally system in place, and many of the complaints are lost in the shuffle. Complaints go unaddressed, and requests are backlogged. Currently, NYCHA data collection on complaints and work orders is internal and non-transparent. They're not part of 311. There's no transparency for tracking, even on open data in New York City after the fact. We have to demand that NYCHA become more transparent. It's time that NYCHA joins the 21st century and modernize their maintenance request collection system and sharing so we can fix modern problems with modern solutions. The goal is to fix modern problems with modern solutions. In the age of Alexa and iPad, we cannot be operating off a pen and piece of paper. This is insidious that this is still taking place in NYCHA. NYCHA is a prime example of an agency we can turn around if we mobilize and activate the power of real-time data tracking and analysis to triage resources. This can turn around. No matter how much people are saying the problem is too big and not controllable. That's exactly what they told Chief Anemone during the mid-90s. They told him it was not possible, and we did it. We did it by maintaining control and properly analyzing what the problem was at the time. We have failed to properly analyze and get our hands around the NYCHA crisis. We can do this with the power of the latest smart technologies. That is why I'm extremely proud over and over again in my communications for the last few months with Chief Anemone. We did a joint op-ed together talking about this issue. And what is very important here, NYCHA cannot develop the system to monitor their system. We need to ask Chief Anemone and some of the architects of the original CompStat model, and back in the 90s, they made the call that CompStat should have been a system that we should have used throughout all of our agencies, because NYCHA is only one of the many agencies that is failing to adapt the new technology of today. And so we need to ask Chief Anemone and those others who were part of the original pilot project that started over 25 years ago to come back and sit down and analyze NYCHA and use it as a second example of how you move government out of crisis. We don't have to live in crisis. And too many people in mid-management and high management and city agencies believe the only way you can maintain the city is to live in crisis. That is untrue. We proved it in the police department, and now it's time to prove it in NYCHA as well. And so when we look at the fact, a system of this magnitude, a CompStat system, would accurately and efficiently track all building repairs across the NYCHA developments, monitor and evaluate NYCHA funding to ensure that the housing agency spending is appropriate to tenant and facility needs, monitor the money, hold employees and supervisors accountable to ensure maintenance complaints and requests are handled accordingly, so they won't be having sex orgies up in the Bronx. They'll be inside the building repairing the buildings, and you don't keep track of them and know how many hours they're spending repairing a particular service. You'll never get what you're supposed to get, and that's what's happening in NYCHA. Prioritize tenants' needs. Put them on the system and prioritize the needs. Which one should we do first? It's unimaginable that an employee will walk into a building to fix a toilet and see that a light switch is not operating or a hole in the wall, and you come back day after day after day, weeks after weeks after weeks. This must be the Keystone Cops of repairs. It's unbelievable that we're operating this way. Provide transparency for residents in the form of real-time, digitized data that can easily access and track. It's time for NYCHA to embrace technology and real-time technology. So I'm joined today with Chief Anemone, as I stated, a brilliant administrator of a system that it's unimaginable. It took us 25 years to recognize the success of CompStat and real-time data retrieving. He understands the power of real-time data because through CompStat, policing was revolutionized in the city by providing with the necessary tools and information to move the city forward. The tools were used to bring down crime and understand what's happening on the ground on every street corner. Data is power, and the tech innovators that are here today also understand the power of using smart technologies to address long-standing problems in New York City public housing. These innovators have expressed in helping to create a CompStat system for NYCHA that will address the problems in maintenance backlogs. We have been talking about this for months, and they're ready and willing to move forward with this conversation. Back in February, I joined residents at Gowanus Housing during the boiler crisis across NYCHA to demand a CompStat-like system for the housing agency, but it has yet to be implemented. I'm happy to hear that there's a whisper of this now in NYCHA, but we want to turn that whisper today into a shout. Let's get this done, and let's make it happen. We cannot allow time to go by while these problems go unaddressed. We cannot allow our NYCHA residents to be silenced into suffering through these deplorable conditions, with their calls being unanswered or massively delayed in response. Instead, let us move forward thinking, and let us be forward thinking and progressive by using the power of smart technologies so that an inspector that comes into an apartment to file a maintenance request can immediately use a tablet, a smartphone, or some other smart device, digitize the complaint, and have it go directly into a central database. The database will be easily accessible online for both the agency and its residents, and across all devices maintenance employees will use. We can use this CompStat system to also track progress of addressing the capital and operation needs of NYCHA. We can also make progress in addressing outstanding projects that have been in the pipeline for a long time. You have projects that have been in the pipeline for years. And by using a proper CompStat system online that everyone would have accessible to, we would no longer allow this system to live in the dark. We're the Silicon Valley of the East, and we have some of the most innovative companies based here, and many of them called Brooklyn home. Let's think outside the box. Let's move NYCHA into the 21st century, and I urge NYCHA to bring tech leaders and residents into the room and develop a RFP proposal now. Low-cost, high-impact system to transform management and upkeep of NYCHA's development across the city. And so again, I am really excited about having with us the architect of what made our city a safe place, and we prospered because of his leadership and his continued contribution to the greatness of this city. And I want to now bring to the microphone the chief. We call him the Chief of Chiefs, Chief Lou Anemone.
Thank you. Thank you, Borough President Adams, and thank the residents who are here with us today. Let's not forget them. By the way, one thing the Borough President didn't mention, I'm a product of NYCHA housing myself, Marlborough Houses in Brooklyn. Spent my teenage years growing up there. So CompStat is a management system, and it helped the police department over the last 25 years reduce crime, number one, but also make the agency more transparent, visible to the people in the community. And this sounds like a perfect opportunity to bring this to NYCHA. You have problems in NYCHA, you have lack of transparency to the residents. Bring in CompStat and let's fix this. It works, it's been proven, it can work here, and we can all take some satisfaction in looking forward to that. Thank you again, Borough President, for bringing this issue front and center.
I'm gonna stay right there because I know they're gonna have some questions for you. You know, so we want to bring in some of our tech guys. We're gonna bring on Devin Hurd and Dave from Esri. You guys, who's gonna speak?
Dave.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Borough President. Thank you to the residents for having us here today. I'm here to speak on behalf of Esri, which is of course just one company based here in New York who's ready and willing to make a measurable impact on this noble initiative. Interim Chairman and CEO of NYCHA, Stanley Brezhnev, presented recently at the Citizens Budget Commission and described these four top priorities to improve NYCHA: transparency, accountability, prioritizing work, and specifically overhauling their work order management system. All 4 points are major reasons why all large city departments use GIS technology, including the NYPD, CompStat, Department of Environmental Protection, work order management, FDNY, sanitation, health, and most recently the MTA decided to spread GIS agency-wide to help turn around their asset management and work management challenges. These departments are as large or larger, and their needs and operations are arguably as complex as NYCHA's, managing very large workforces spread across the entire city. DEP is a great example of adopting GIS to conquer a massive asset and work management challenge of the city's critical water infrastructure. NYPD and the FDNY are another great examples of using data analysis and location awareness that GIS provides to manage their performance, reducing crime significantly since the CompStat program began, and FDNY reducing and maintaining high-performance ambulance and fire apparatus response times. We're excited to get involved in this initiative. We believe that we owe it to the residents to have real-time location awareness, a performance management platform that allows not only those that need to complete the work orders access to real-time priorities, but also to the public so that they may have a vision and insight into where the problems are and how the city will be addressing these. So thank you very much. We look forward to playing a role in this project.
Thank you. Thank you. And also from OpenGov, my good friend Joel Natividad.
Thank you, Borough President Adams. Thank you once again for having me here, Borough President, Chief of Chiefs. I can still remember 3 years, 7 months ago when we first had our first meeting at the Borough President Adams' office, where he was asking for this CompStat. And it's been a long journey, and we're so excited that we're making this innovation now. In the city that pioneered data-driven policing with CompStat, that passed one of the nation's first open data laws, that created the first analytics office in the nation, it's high time that we bring this innovation down to the agency level, not just here in Brooklyn, but across the city. When I first immigrated to New York City in 1991, as it happens, my first job was working on CompStat. I was working on NYCHA, Narcotic Investigation Tracking of Recidivist Offenders. Back then, it was still mainframes. And even with that technology, we were able to bring all those innovations that we have now, that we appreciate now, and we just take as a matter of fact. And I can't help but compare that journey 25 years ago when I was still young and a brand new immigrant to New York City. And I feel blessed that hopefully we can bring some of those innovations now that we have the modern tools that we have. I'm also a product of New York City's Civic Tech Challenge, NYC Big Apps, and I look forward to working with everybody here in the Borough President Adams' office and the civic tech community to accelerate this initiative and bring the government that we expect and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And I think it's so important to hear from our NYCHA residents, and we're also joined by NYCHA residents from Farragut Houses, Lafayette Houses, Margaret Brown, Sarah Jacobs, and Tyrese Stambeck. Okay, and we want to hear from as Isabella Lee from Whitman Houses.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for being here today because we need help here in Whitman Houses. And you can look around and see the situation here. We had contractors here since 2016. Nothing has been, to my knowledge, not one building has been finished yet. We're doing the roofing and the brickwork. My residents cannot breathe through this netting that they have up here. We need help. How I try to reach out to NYCHA on deaf ears. I didn't know what to do. So I'm so happy that the media is here today to help us out because we do need help here in Whitman Houses. So at the end, if you could just walk around with me so I can just show you, we're fenced in like we're living in prison. We're not living in prison, we're in a development, and we'd like to be treated like that. So I'm just asking for help. We had, over the summer, every time it rained, and we have pictures, it rained in my residents' apartments. It destroyed their furniture. That we reach out to NYCHA, deaf ears. We need help here in Whitman, so please help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And from Ingersoll, Whitman, Gerald Burgess.
Morning. How you doing? Thank you, Borough President. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Darrell Burgess. I'm the president of Ingersoll Houses, the Resident Association. I'm also a resident of Ingersoll Houses for over 50 years. I think it's very absurd, absolutely absurd, we just had a 3-day horrible event of no heat and no hot water. So this press conference today was very much needed. I, myself, as a president and resident leader, put in requests for repairs for heat, hot water, to only have those tickets closed out within a number of hours. I encourage every resident in Ingersoll to call up, to download the NYCHA portal, and to request repairs for heat and hot water. Again, their tickets were closed out. We have a rat population that's taken over our development. You think the Bronx is something? Come down to 5 Fleet Walk and look at the rats there. Look at 85 Navy Walk, look at the rats there. Look at 16 Fleet Walk, which our resident association office is. There's a big hole with incomplete steam pipe work. We have not had use of our incinerators for 15 months. And the answers that I get will be finished at the end of the month. We had to go through our family day with horrible, deplorable conditions in which our children could not enjoy, but we made the best of it. I think it's very ludicrous for NYCHA to just keep passing the buck, to just keep giving us no answer at all when it comes to heat and hot water. They had all summer to get it together, like the borough president said. Again, we're faced with another year. I shouldn't have to call the mayor's office, the borough president's office, city council, state assembly, just to get an answer. I feel totally disrespected, and my residents feel totally disrespected. The garbage is piled up in front of the entrance of the building to the point where you cannot get out of the building. We have scaffolding and we have netting in front of the building. If you walk up to the development, you would think there's no way of getting inside. Again, we need help, and I thank the borough president. This CompStat will just alleviate the problems that we suffer every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're going to open to any questions because I'm sure you have some for Chief Anemone. And I say this over and over again. We cannot thank the men and women of the media, particularly Monica Lee, for just really not allowing this to just fall into the crack. The request for repairs, the backlog. This is a bottomless, endless, dark hole that really we're at the starting point of turning this agency around. I saw it in the police department. I remember leaving the police academy feeling as though there was nothing we can do about crime. There was nothing we could do about the signs that said no radios in the cars. There was nothing we can do about crack and gun and robberies. I remember just responding to households where people threw up their hands in surrenders. If you close your eyes and listen to the complaints that NYCHA residents are having now, this is what we heard across the city, from the South Bronx to South Jamaica, Queens, to Harlem, to Brownsville. People surrendered. They felt that nothing could be done. We turned it around. When you reveal what you're doing every day in real time, it compels every employee, every manager, everyone at the beginning of the agency to the top of the agency. It compels them to state what they're doing daily. We must monitor in real time to turn this system around. We're not doing that now. They stated they're going to move in the right direction. We need to make it happen. We have the tech geniuses here in this city who are saying they want to be a part of making this happen. The head of NYCHA should be on the phone today calling Chief Anemone and asking him to come in and give them the instructions on how we move and implement a CompStat system. We're fortunate to have leaders like him still in this city that remember what this city was like 25 years ago and who and what we are now because of the implementation of technology. It's time to move forward. We're open to any questions.
The mayor had a question about Walt, and he basically said that he had this. This is going to be a better winter than we had last year. Now, have you reached out to him personally about CompStat? Because he said that they haven't. This is going to be a better winter. He said it twice. He promised the people of NYCHA. You're saying what?
I am saying that this is not going to be a better winter. We started off with heating complaints already. We started off with hot water complaints already. And when you utilize a system that monitors in real time, you can go to a computer using GIS mapping or any other system and see how many boilers are out, how much we spent per boiler. I believe that many people who are hired to repair boilers are learning it's more expensive to repair things in an emergency basis than proper maintenance. If you put the right systems in place, you can prevent the breakdown. So this is not a good one. We're moving in the wrong direction. Already we have the heating complaints. This should have been monitored months ago.
When you hear $1 million a month, the mayor's going to spend $1 million a month on the heat, and outside forces will be coming in. How fast can you implement this, and what would you say directly to the mayor about the money that he's spending?
This is the problem with NYCHA that many people don't realize. We are spending, for the amount of money we're spending, we should be receiving high quality services. But we can't wrap our hands around the money that we're spending. And because there's not a clear analysis of how money is being spent. Who's it going to? Who's the contract? When you look at the water tower fiasco, who were the repairs? Who was in charge of them? All of this information must be monitored. We're spending too much money to be receiving the lack of services that we're receiving, because the money we're spending is on an emergency basis. You always pay more. Any homeowner would tell you that you pay more when you are responding to emergencies instead of being proactive, instead of reactive. That's a good question. We have been speaking with NYCHA under the previous leadership, as well as City Hall. We've been calling for this for several months. Back in 2017 was the beginning of this conversation. We continue to call on this. Chief Anemone we did an op-ed on this as well. So we heard recently that there's a conversation about it. But if you allow NYCHA to give us a watered-down version, that's a big mistake. We need to bring in the tech giants, and we need to bring in the person who originated the system in the city. And that person is standing here with us now. And so NYCHA must have the experts. We can't allow them to create a NYCHA-style CompStat system. That's how we got in this mess in the first place. So we're not sure where they are, but I'm going to be on the phone today with the head of NYCHA and say it's time to bring in Chief Anemone and others who have already created this system that we're benefiting from now. Yes.
Chief, if you got a phone call today from City Hall, where do you even start? How would you even start with this problem? What would be your advice?
Well, we turn to the experts in the data mining and find out, for example, how much of that $1 million is being spent here at Whitman, how much is being spent at Marlborough Houses or Farragut Houses or the Glenwood Houses. Does anyone know? Is anyone tracking any of that? How much does it cost to repair a toilet in this development as opposed to one in the Bronx? Is anyone looking? Is anyone asking? I had some time and some experience also at the MTA. And one of the things we discovered there at the MTA was we had a contractor servicing the plumbing. And on Fridays, to the Borough President's point, he had people working for him who would stuff the toilets so that they would be called in on an emergency basis to work overtime on Friday and Saturday and Sunday to build the MTA and fix the problem that they themselves created. Right now, there's no transparency in the organization. You want and need the data. And these people behind us here can get us the data. How many calls to 311 about heat? How many calls to 311 about water or no hot water? Where are the calls coming from? How long does it take to fix them? What is the average for this development or for another development? And if they're different, why? Is someone not doing their job? There's got to be accountability at each development. There ought to be somebody from NYCHA responsible for this development living here themselves in this development so people could see them on a daily basis and ask them the questions that you're asking us.
Absolutely.
Go, Chief.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the cooperation. I think the only thing that would slow us down, the only thing that would delay any of this is leadership. As the borough president mentioned, in the police department, we had excellent leadership from the top, from the mayor's office right on down, through Commissioner Bratton and the rest of the people working for us, who were dedicated to getting it done. If NYCHA has those same quality people, we could start, well, you know, in 1994, homicides dropped by over 400, our first year of CompStat. Over 400 homicides less in the city, and the same across the board in other categories. I think we could do it here in NYCHA quickly, effectively, and the people who need it would see the results on a daily basis.
Based on CompStat, is there any kind of estimate of price in addition to the time it would take, based on how CompStat was developed?
Yeah, well, I mean, we did it with a wing and a prayer, real cheap computers, and that's how we started. Technology has advanced well beyond that now. I know that there are solutions out there, probably off-the-shelf solutions, that we could start using the following day.
And think about it, back as it was indicated, that back when CompStat was developed, the cost of the technology was so much more expensive. This technology is not expensive now. The biggest inhibitor is the will. The will to turn this agency into transparency. As in the police department, every commander of the precinct had to come in and talk about the crime in his community. He had to know his community. We don't know who runs Ingersoll Whitman. We don't know the face of the person. We don't know who it is. These invisible people. Halloween every day is in NYCHA. The ghost is always disappearing in this place. We need to bring in on the ground individuals who are responsible. And then, as the chief pointed out, which is so important, how do you gauge contractor by contractor? If it costs $500,000 to deal with repairs here, and then you go to the Bronx and you find out it's costing $2 million, you have to drill down and find out why. No one is finding out why to the answers. We're writing the checks without any deep dive into where the money is going. A system that monitors that will change that entire conversation.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It should be perfectly easy with a computer.